So welcome to Benny's Designs. This is a live show with live peoples having a natter in chat. It's recorded for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. And that means there's lots of rabbit trails and bunny trails, and there's lots and lots of chatter going on and disruption and all sorts. So apologies for that if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to know any more information or if you've got any questions, pop them in chat. I'm a bit slow at the moment at getting back to everybody, but I will eventually get to everybody when you ask questions. So I'm going to work in the Hannah Carlson book. Now this is part 2, because part 1, which was last Thursday live show, I scribbled some bits of scratching, just scribbled colour of my Neocolor 2s in certain spaces. And the idea is you can go through your whole colour book, and apologies for just my laptop doing something on its own, because it did. So I went through the whole page and scratched the colours, and you could do this with the entire book. You could scratch the colour where you think you want it, put a piece of cheap photocopy paper in between and shut the book. Do another page and shut the book. So you could, if you were going away and you didn't want to take your Neos, you could do an entire colour book. A little bit when we were children we used to get colour books, and they just look kind of normal until you put a pen to a paintbrush to them and colour would pop out. Well, this is slightly different because you've done the colour first. Now you can do this with Derwent watercolour pencils, Derwent Inktense pencils. You can do them with Derwent, lost the word, Graphitint. You could do them with Derwent Art Bars. You can do them with Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s. You could do with Faber-Castell watercolor crayons and pencils, because they're very good quality. As long as it's the very good quality, and that normally means expensive, you know the pigment's good. And so that could be any crayon or any pencil that's water-based. And you can scratch a little tiny bit of colour, or you can scratch a lot of colour, it depends. Now I like to do a bit of colour in the middle, and then with my water brush or my rigger I like to just tease out the colour with a barely damp brush. That does two things. It gives you a watercolour effect without the water, and it makes sure that your pages stay lovely and flat. So as I say, if you were going somewhere and you thought, well, it's going to be warm and the Neos will melt and I don't want to carry them because of the weight, you could physically colour every page in your book and take 2 water brushes with you, a thin one and a thicker one, because if you've got a thicker one you can do bigger spaces. And I've shut the book without putting the paper in, so let's hope she hasn't got a blue face. No, she hasn't. So because this is quite vibrant, you want to put a piece of photocopy paper, and I mean, this is 30 pages, you're using 30 pieces of photocopy paper, so it's not going to break the bank. I also did it in this one, and really roughly scratched the Neocolor 2s in little spaces. I've left that because I want a cloud effect, and of course the Neos melt like butter. Now I haven't quite finished this one, so the next video will be finishing off this particular technique, and it will be colouring it. But because this one's already done, we'll do this one. So this is part 2 of the Hannah Carlson Neocolor 2s, and it's kind of prepping your paper with colour. So imagine you're on the beach somewhere nice and warm instead of being in England where it's blooming freezing. So I'll zoom in and you can see the colour better, hopefully. So I did manage to, I don't think I missed anything, but I've put little specks of colour where I want them to be darkest. So here it wants to be dark, and then I want to kind of get a bit of a light effect. Here, dark to light. So you can see really rough marks, but hopefully, because I've not done this before, I have scratched the colour on and done it straight away, but I've never done it as an actual page. So you may have to think about your colours first, because once the colour's down, that's it. So if you put a red one there and think, well, actually I don't want that colour next to that, it's too late because it's down. But if you know how you like your colours, and you know roughly what you want to do, then you can scratch the colours as you would individually, but do them all at once and then don't activate them. Just put a piece of paper next to them, and it's very quick, you know, half an hour, not an hour to do a page like this. Turn over and do the next page, and then put a piece of photocopy paper between, turn over and do the next page, and you could do the whole book. So I'm going to start at the top here. Now the one thing you do have to remember is you've got your piece of paper here, and there's a few little specks, just tiny specks, and that's going to be colour, so I don't really want it on there. So I'm going to turn it over, but I'm going to put this on here so that when I put my hand on the near colours, it's not going to contaminate my hand. And also, a warm hand is going to melt the neos, and you are going to get marks. So it's always best to do this anyway, and then you keep your piece absolutely immaculate. Piece of cheap photocopy paper, and then you work on a space, move it, work on a space, and you just work round like this. And of course when you get to the bottom you don't need to do that because your hand isn't on your book. So I'm going to work on these three here, and I'm left-handed, so I'm going to want to have that space. I'm just going to see if I can get rid of that. That's a little bit better. So I scratched a yellow and an orange here, so I'm going to do the yellow first, and the way I work, and I can't find a baby wipe, typical, just give me 2 seconds. The one thing you do need with you is a baby wipe, but I use these little travel packs of hand wipes, and I find they're just as good. And you've also got them if you want to have a sandwich as well. And of course somebody's been in my handbag and it's missing. Yep, it's missing. So just bear with me 2 seconds. I have my hidey spaces for things. Then I have a drawing sketchbook kind of. So I do like the Huggies because they kind of sit nice and they don't smell. I get the non-smelly ones, so if you've got asthma that's quite good. Now you do not want to put this anywhere near your work because it will activate it. So I normally use, I hadn't got rid of the old one, and you can turn them over and use them again, so of course that's quite good. But I've got a fresh one, and I find if it sits that way around, it's quite handy. So you need to keep it away from your work because it will buckle your pages and do things. So I squeeze it fast to get it going, and then I take it to just barely damp. And then we're going to activate the yellow. And again, I've not really done this to this extent, so I'm not sure how pale it's going to be. The other thing you can do is take off the colour. There's a tiny bit there, because if you want a watercolour effect, I'm not really bothered about a watercolour effect, and I don't like wasting paint, so I'm not really going to bother about that, so I'm going to take this and draw it out. So I've probably put too much colour on there. So I'll know for next time if I want a watercolour effect. I've got a little bit of one here, but I want to use a lot less colour. So I'll do the next one. Now this doesn't really bother me in the Hannah Carlson ones, really doesn't. If I was drawing something that I wanted it to be like a watercolour, then I wouldn't do it like this. But this is just really, really a nice quiet way to work. So then we can take the orange and manipulate it. And this is why you want a small water brush. Now I use the Derwent number 1 and number 2 water brush because I just find I like the smallness, but it depends on how intricate your pattern is. So this won't work for a really, really, really tiny space, but what you could do is you can look at the colours. Another thing you could do is look at the colours and think, well, I want all these kind of orangey colour. And you can scratch some colour on a piece of paper. And as long as it was folded up so it wouldn't contaminate anything, you could work from the paper palette and colour in that way. So you don't always have to do it like that. Now I've got a bit of orange on there, but I'm just going to leave that and take that out. So because I'd got quite a lot of colour, this particular page doesn't have much of a highlight. So I'm going to do the ring next, I think. Now I do have yellow on here, so I'm just going to take that off. You can see that little dot. Now I have a paler one on the outside, and there is quite a lot of colour on here, so it's going to be kind of a bit full on this. I had a lighter colour on the outside and a darker one on the inside. So I've probably got enough to do all these kind of rings, even though there's no colour on them, because I have put quite a lot of colour on this page. I don't normally work like this, but it's quite enjoyable. It was an experiment, and it's quite quick, and it's just a nice, easy way to colour without thinking too much. Again, these particular shapes, I wouldn't think this flower's got to be this colour, because you can't really tell what flower it is anyway, unless it's like a primrose. So again, I've got a bit of colour left, which I hate to waste, but we need to do this one next. So we're teasing that colour out. And sometimes it's a bit small, so you might want to take a small rigger. You don't have to do this with a water brush. You could do it with whichever's your favourite brush to work with. But it does need to be just damp, just barely damp, not wet. And it's not going to be, a work of art, but it's a colour book. It's going to be pretty, and it's there for therapy. Oh, hi Judy, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else popping in? Oopsie. So again, you manipulate the colour and we can get a bit of a highlight effect, so that looks quite nice. Now you do really need to I'm just a tight Yorkshire lass, but you really need, if you want to do that, it's better to kind of I've put quite a lot of colour on there. But it's got some different colours together, so you can do it two ways. You can put two colours together, or you can mix them. On the paper. You've not got too many chances to touch it though, because it will disintegrate. It's paper after all. But the Hannah Carlson paper is really well behaved, and it will let you do all sorts of things before it decides it's had enough. So you can just about get that Neo to melt into a really nice watercolour. And it's giving it a little bit of variation. So you've still got some work to do. It's not easy. You've still got some work. So again, that's quite nice. You know, if it was easy, you wouldn't really want to do it as much, probably. But the idea is, you know, if you're on your holidays and you're colouring, you don't want to be colouring and getting stressed. You want to just be able to play. And of course these Neos absolutely melt like butter. So you're only stroking the colour a couple of times, which is just enough to allow that paper to forgive and let you manoeuvre that colour once you've activated it. And you can put lots of different colours next to each other, or you can just put one. It depends entirely on how you want to colour it. But we do have a little bit of variation. So I'm going to just carry on going right round. Again, don't forget to move the page. No, I do have a dark there, so if I wanted that to be really pale, I would wash the brush out, but I actually quite like the fact it's toned down that pale green something, so they're still connected. There's a colour of every colour together. It's not just that pale green, it's got that brown in it as well, and the olive, and the dark olive. So it's connected. Colours always are nicer when, oops, they're connected. I'm just having a bit of difficulty keeping in the lines today. But you can go a lot slower than I can and just manipulate that colour. And I'm just playing with the end of the brush, and that seems to keep it the driest. If you manoeuvre it too much, the brush becomes very wet. And I've got just that really nice colour that's gone into this colour now. Just manoeuvre that around just a little bit. It's just a bit too dark there and not anywhere else. So manipulate that bit there. If you find your brush is too big, use a damp rigger. It would work in exactly the same way. You just need a tablespoon of water and a baby wipe, and you can use a rigger. And I probably would have done to get some really nice subtle shades. But it's not so bad, it's considering how quickly it takes you to do this. And again, you can't mess about too much. As soon as it's activated, you need to push it around, because again, we're playing with paper here, not watercolor paper. This is colour book paper, and although it's good quality, it doesn't allow you to mess about too much with it. So if we've got any questions. Hi, I'm lurking. Do you have a real name so we can say hi back? Hello, lurker. Oh, thank you. It's a strange name. So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This might be your first time here. It's a bit of a very slow, quiet little group. We do have our moments though. So if you've got any questions, pop them in caps. Thanks for joining me, guys. Hope everybody's okay and battling down the hatches. Which was that the gold one here? I cannot remember. Sorry, Judy, I can't remember. I apologise. It's on the video. I did shout out the colours as I did it. So I'll have a look in a minute and I'll find it. There were two colours, but it was on the video. It was on the video, so I would find them, but I'll list them below. But I'll have to watch the video because I can't remember. Apologies. It seems to have fried my brain things. I know that this one's olive and dark olive, I think. I know the olives, but I just cannot. And this, I say, this is the dark olive. I would imagine it's a gold, and I will find it in a second when I get them out. Remind me when I get them out to do the Mythomorphia page and finish the coral. I'll have a play, but they're just two yellows. One could be yellow ochre. But I did it last week, so unfortunately, as I say, the brain's been fried. So I kind of like this. It's a little bit grungy. I will tell you, darling, but as I say, just at this moment in time, the brain has gone a little bit. Now, it's not wet. It's just a little bit, because of course there's a lot of colour on here. If I'd have done this with pencil, I wouldn't have put as much colour, and the next one I do, I won't put as much colour, and then I can get a really nice watercolour effect. But it was always going to be a kind of trial and error. So just do this last bit. And now you've got to remember that things are wet as well, so you know it's now a watercolour, it's not dry pigment. So I think we've nearly done that now. And again, you know, it will let you do it a couple of times, but anything after then, it's... Oh, there is a leaf there. So I think I've done all of that bit. There's a couple of rosebuds. And again, now, if you look at the colour, there's colour on the brush, because it's a neo colour. So manipulate the colour and then activate it to the top. And you do need to activate it, otherwise you'll end up with a very, very strong kind of colour down here and a wishy-washy line. So activate that colour and it'll melt to butter, and then you can just blend it in. And I do have some red on there, so I've got two choices. If I want it very pale, I need to get rid of it. And then the next one is just... Now the one you couldn't do this with is a Bennett Klein, because the paper is just a bit too thin. And if you're downloading anything onto printer paper, it's just a bit too thin for that. Hi Miss Jamie, welcome to Bunny's Designs. And hi, whoever hi is. Hi. Anybody else popping in? Right, so I think I'm going to do this particular flower here. Again, the neos just melt like butter, and then the damp brush activates it further round. So again, damp brush. And that's a little bit wetter than I normally work, but and I did manage to get a little bit of colour down there because I used the edge. The bottom edge is a very fine, sharp edge, and so I managed to get a really nice, crisp little line of colour in there. And then we can activate these. And then the last one. So you get some really soft colours, and I'm not going to get rid of that colour, I shall just take it up there. If you want to put the white on, you can do it with a Posca pen, or you can do it with a bit of gouache. Now the Neo colour that I had, the Neo Art Bars, the white went over black, but I don't know if the Neo colours do that. But I suppose we could have a go. And then we want to activate this. And again, I could have put a little bit more dark in there, I think. But they're very soft. Very soft shades, so we can't really grumble, and it's going to be fairly quick. So you know, if you only got an hour on the beach, you can have one eye on this and one eye on the toddlers, or depends how distracted you are. If you get very absorbed, it's not a good idea, but if they're right in front of you, you can normally hear shouts. Oh. So I haven't done the key yet. So again, I've got colour on here. So I am wasting a bit, and there's a tight Yorkshire lass, but I like the effect. So again, just going in there, having it darkest and then manoeuvring it out. I think there's a bit too much colour. I would probably put just half as much of this colour to get a really nice soft colour, soft watercolour effect. But you know, it was a very quick way to work. It was an experiment. I just wondered how easy it would be to do, and it was. And so you're not going to have your absolute perfect colour book page, but some of the pages take 10, 12, 15 hours, so you know you're not going to be expected to get that effect with just using this effect. And if you dried the brush every time, it probably would get a better highlight. But as a tight Yorkshire lass, I don't really want to waste any paint. And I didn't do that one. So you can have a highlight on there, or you can get rid of the highlight. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them in caps. Yeah, I probably didn't mean toddlers, I meant children, you know, when they're older. Most toddlers I used to have on a lead. But they never went far from me anyway, so I was quite lucky. So you know, just sat them down, and 20 minutes later they'll still be sat in exactly the same place. Whereas I know some toddlers would be kind of so some are darker than others, but it's not bothering me so much. Or you could do this, you take the dog to the beach. I think if you took Alfie, you'd have to be throwing the ball every 5 seconds. And just there I did put a scratch, a tiny scratch of colour. So I'm going to get rid of the pink and then twist to a point, and I want the bottom one first because I do want a nice effect. So you've got to clean your brush every time you don't contaminate the next one. Just about got a watercolour effect on that one, and then we'll go back for the birdie. So the reason I've got a little rose there, so I missed a rose, some little tiny rose under there. So I've got this purple here down, so I'm going to do this first, so it's quite a nice bright colour. And the other thing is, if you've missed a tiny spot, you haven't got your colours. But if I was one short, I would have the colour, just a bit of it on the end. And this is the same blue, so kind of you can do this. And I didn't do under there, so I could just put that there. Now this one should go to a watercolour. So manipulate the colour, drag it down. You should have a really, really pretty watercolour effects. So manipulate the colour and take it to nothing. Manipulate the colour. So we do have a little bit of a watercolour effect. Just a tiny watercolour effect there. So for very little effort, I'm quite impressed with that. Oh, they're wonderful, aren't they, the Neo Arts, Claire? Claire says she's found an old set of Neo Arts. The Neo Arts are to die for. They're so gorgeous, and there is one in my pencil case with my watercolours. Now the black one I must have taken out, but in here, this is what the Neo Art looks like. So Neo Art was before by Caran d'Ache, and look how fat they are. I mean, they're bigger. They're bigger. Almost as thick as your finger. They are gorgeous. You can snap them, but the others will snap easily. And this one, you can make a little well in it, and you can draw just holding it, and you can do a black and white drawing. And that's the one my daughter did of the black cat, which I don't think I have handy. And she drew this black cat with the white and the black in her hand, like this. But they were made by Caran d'Ache, and they are actually really expensive now. I did find a set and it was £200, a set of 60. But I would not have bought my Neos if I'd found these in the art shop. I have 2 sets that I'd given to my daughters and they love them. But they don't make them anymore, so I think if we put some pressure on Caran d'Ache, they do have the moulds for these, because they mould the Neo bars you see now are oil pastels. This is water soluble wax pastel, but the Neo Art are wax pastels, and you cannot dilute those with water. So if you see these now in a new box, if you go on the website for Caran d'Ache, the ones that are this size are oil based. They're wax pastels. They're not water based. The water based ones, they change the pigment very slightly and call them Neocolor 2s. But these react almost identical and colour wise to Neocolor 2s. but they made these many years ago. I don't think the black's in there. No, because I think my daughter's been using it. But if you want to do a monochrome or a black and grey sketch, you just take the black one with you and your brush, and you can do some wonderful, wonderful colours with that. Don't think I've got anything handy. No, I don't think I've got anything handy. Here I may have. One never knows in my sketchbooks. I'm destroying that one for that colour book. Yeah, I'll dig some out a bit later and show you how they work. They are really, really, really good for sketching. But again, we're off on a rabbit trail, so I'll go back to my little birdie. But they're really fantastic. So if you've got any questions, pop them in caps. So hi Claire, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else popping in? Miss Jamie? Sorry James, beg your pardon. I'm as blind as a bat. So if you pop it in caps, I know to stop and read. Otherwise I normally let chat just fly. So I'm going to do this one again. Start at the top, and then when you get up, I've got a flat bit. Try to keep it as a point. And then if you've got a longish space, you should end up with the most wonderful watercolour effect. So we'll start dark in there and dark in there. And look at that colour just melt like butter. And it's only a barely damp brush, it's not really that. And you can take that colour very pale. So again, the dark colour, where we want the dark colour in a contrast with that highlight, and then manipulate it to almost nothing. A word of warning, don't touch purple. You've got to practice a little bit, because if you touch any other Neocolor 2 colour, you will be inundated with colour, because they are so well pigmented. And that means they've got more pigment and less binder. And it's the binder that's cheap and the pigment that's expensive. So we have a little bit of a watercolour effect there. So the less colour you scratch on, the better the watercolour effect. So if you can remember that, less is more. And what I want to do with this is just blend back. So I've got a change of colour, a little bit like I do with the Neo, with the Hydrus. You start one colour at one end and go pale, and then you've got the other colour at the other end. And it's a transition between one colour and another, which you get in feathers. So again, I've got that colour going, get this colour the darkest, and then mingle them together. So we've got another bit of a watercolour effect, and again every time I'm taking off my colour so my brush is clean. And I'm working backwards up the bird. I'm going to do this last, I think. So again, here I wanted dark. So I'm going to have to take this off every time now, because the purple is very vibrant and it will destroy the blue unless I take the blue down. I'll take the blue down first. Take that blue down. And then we'll take the purple up. And the other thing you're doing is making a completely unique colour. It's a purple turquoise. It's a very dark purple turquoise you've made. So again, you don't have to buy every Neo colour. So So we've made a different colour. And again, this turquoise colour here. No, I wanted the purple at the back, and then I wanted, and I forgot to do that one, but if you've, because this is so pigmented, you can pick up colour and move it. And then we want that beautiful, that green colour to just pop that purple. So even though, you know, you just scribble colour on, you're going to get some really nice effects when it comes to, this is the important bit. This is the bit where you get artistic. This is the bit that you see what the colours are doing. So I've got the blue, and I'm trying to keep away from the green in the middle, and I've got the purple round. And again, they've got the blue at the top. You've got the purple round. And you've come out with some really unusual colours. And then I'm going to go in just with this. Oh, I've forgotten about this one. So we could do all of this. And then we've got a pretty strong colour. If you forget anything, and I've forgotten to do these, I think I'm going to do these turquoise colour. So again, you can pick colour up, and then we've got that purple. And this brush is just barely damp, it's not too strong. And even when I've missed, that colour has been quite nice to just move about a bit. And again, get rid of that colour because we don't really want it. If you feel your brush is getting too dry and it's not moving the colour around, squeeze it and then dry it off. And try to twist it so you get your point back. And so we've got the head to do next. Has anybody else got any questions? Pop them in caps. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'm going to do the yellow beak first. And again, that, you wouldn't think the yellow would be so strong. So we've got a blue going on here. And I've also got a green as well. So again, you can just maneuver that to go from that beautiful bird colour, turquoise, to a blue. I got a dirty green then because I messed about with it. So we want the purple first. And again, it doesn't matter, I've missed lots of spaces. It's putting that in for me. And then in certain spaces it's missing, so it's not a dead flat colour, so that's quite nice. And I'm going to have to get rid of that purple because I now need, oops, the blue. And activating that brush. I should have done that with a little brush actually, but I can do this. Alright, so we've got this teal colour again. Now it works really well in small spaces. It'll be a test whether it works on bigger spaces or not. But we've kind of got a little bit of a highlight shadow going on with very little work and very little water. Remember, try not to activate the brush too much because we want to keep it as dry as possible. And I think that might be just a bit of a... So we're going to go in there with this deepest, I think this is Lagoon. It's very dark colour. And we should get a bit of a highlight going on. And it's finished. So I'll pan out really quickly because we're going to have some barking now. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Whoopsie. So it doesn't take very long at all. So we've got a bit of a watercolour effect. Oops, the camera's at a silly angle, sorry. It doesn't take very long to get a really nice effect. And most of it's dry. I put too much colour on there. Now you could get rid of it if you wanted. You could kind of wet it again. But there literally is tons and tons of colour. Now you've got to be really quick if you're going to do this, and it breaks my heart. Oops, I don't want to miss that lovely highlight that I've got down there. So I've got a bit off. I don't want to do any more because it's going to be buckled and I don't want it to buckle. Thank you, darling. So that's the end. I mean, you can dab it if you want, but only dab once and then clean tissue, like you do with watercolour. You can damp with watercolour. I've got a bit of a buckle going on there, but I think there's pretty colours. There's a little bit of a watercolour effect, and considering it was really fast, I love the tail feathers and the different colours. So again, that's something I've learned to do again. So you could, in theory, colour your whole book in scratches of colour. Make sure you put paper between, either greaseproof paper, tracing paper, but printer paper is cheapest. And if you fold it and stick it down to make it the exact shape, it's not even going to stick out. And even if you had a page in each one, you can colour all this with scratches of colour and just take a water brush with you and I think that's pretty good. And you could also do that for kids. You could instead of giving your children your Neos, which is like not a good idea. Oh, I shut that, but it was dried. It was dried, you see. So again, no water. So you could actually scratch with your Neos into your children's colour books, because obviously whatever you do, your children want to do. So you can scratch colour into their colour books, and you know, they're not going to mind if you put paper or not, but you can do. And then give them a couple of water brushes and they can do it with you, and they don't feel that you're not letting them use their stuff. They've got these beautiful colours, and that's what encourages young children to become artists. And I don't care if they're going to come up to become engineers and brain surgeons. It's really good to chill and draw. It doesn't matter what age you are. So that's the end of part 2 of the Neos being completely portable and scratched into the book without physically taking them with you, in the Hannah Carlson, and it's really beautiful paper. And of course I love the fact I don't have to do a background, so I don't have a big wet space. And if you have some smaller spaces, you can work with a damp rigger, a damp brush, not any watercolour brushes. It's got to be a rigger or a barely damp brush. Keep them as dry as possible, because they're all designed to flood out water, and we want to keep these pages as dry as possible. But there's no reason why you can't do your whole book and then take it on holiday with you, and you can still get some quite nice effects. Even just doing a dot of colour probably would be a better idea. And I've just seen that little dot there and that little dot there. Because it's shiny, you know you haven't done it. And that's all I've wasted of the Neos. Every scrap I scratched onto there, apart from that little tiny bit. Every bit of it is in there. There's nothing in a water pot. All my expensive Neo colour is on my page, and I kind of like that as a tight Yorkshire lass. So thank you for watching. That's the end of part 2.